welcome to Kikao, your weekly focus on Africa's agriculture. This week, we ask the question, is agriculture the silver bullet for Africa? My name is Joe Ageo. On this show, we will focus on some of the ways in which agriculture can transform Africa's economies. And in a short while, we'll be speaking to our panel for the week. But first, let's do a scene setter.
Yeah, I think it starts with the appropriate research institutions that provide the input that is relevant to each geographical location of a country. Because in most times, inputs are just sold for market, not looking at this is the particular variety that is suitable. So that is number one. So it means when doing that, you work with the relevant input dealers association that are certified, as well as the research institutions that have released this to make sure that is what the farmers are getting.
To the market, all fertilizers are white. A poor farmer will not be able to tell whether this one is quality fertilizer and this one is not quality fertilizer. Somebody has to be held responsible for that process of ensuring that there is quality checks on all the inputs that the farmer is going to use, and also creating awareness for the farmers when they're accessing, because then we have those who are certified dealers and there are those ones who are not. How will the farmer be able to differentiate between those ones who are certified and who are not certified?
All right, let's now join Dr. Canisius Kanangire, the Executive Director of AATF, for that panel discussion for the week.
Africa still faces challenges in the production, distribution, and widespread use of basic agricultural input, including certified seed, fertilizers, and pesticides. Yet, for agriculture to prosper, farm inputs need to be available, affordable, accessible, and of good quality. Indeed, demonstration plots across Africa have shown that modern agricultural input, like improved seed and fertilizers, have the potential to increase yields. However, the use of low-quality agricultural inputs is still a major barrier to agricultural technology adoption in sub-Saharan Africa. This is made worse by the lack of adequate information on the quality of such input. Further, the prevalence of poor quality or counterfeit seeds and other input in the market continue to lower productivity among smallholder farmers in Africa. On this episode of Kikao series, we will discuss how to ensure farmers get quality input material for their crops and the impact this would have on Africa's food and nutrition security. I am your host, Dr. Canisius Kanangire, Executive Director of AATF, and my guests today are Dr. John McMurdy, Vice President, Innovation and Development at CropLife International, who is joining us virtually, Mr. Abed Mathagu, Program Officer, Regulatory Affairs at AATF, and Jacob Cheptaiwa, Deputy Director, Seed Certification at Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, KEPHIS, Kenya. You're welcome, sirs. Tell me, how significant is the problem of low-quality inputs in the agricultural sector across the world, but also specifically here in Africa?
It is true. The issue of poor quality farm inputs is of significant importance, and you can tell that because the government is putting up systems, it's putting up controls, it's putting up money, resources to ensure that quality farm inputs are always available to the farming community. So it is very significant.
Very significant.
Very significant.
What is it? How significant is it at global level?
Europe, in the case of crop protection inputs, their own authorities estimate that maybe 10 to 15% of those crop protection inputs are in fact illegal, not registered, or counterfeit products. And that's one of the most regulated markets in the world. So I think if we use that to think, okay, what might be happening in some other markets that perhaps are not as regulated? And I think really the key point here is how much this can drive down the confidence of farmers in inputs and input technologies. If they're not getting the return on investment of what they're spending their hard-earned money on, it's going to probably affect their decisions in seasons to come.
It is clear that it is very significant and everywhere because of different regulations. But what about supply on the African continent? Are they available?
I think in the African continent, of course, we are net importers of these inputs, whether it is seed or fertilizer or pesticides. So that comes with some cost element, and now you can be sure that therefore that affects the supply because it's not every farmer that is able to afford quality input. So there's an element of being able to afford and also being aware about the benefit of those inputs.
So there is a problem of low quality farm input across the world, but specifically on the African continent. Can you tell me the overall impact this problem may have on the farming industry, let me say so, the farming business, specifically on African continent?
I can start with that, but certainly defer to others on the panel there. I think at a general level, if you consider how significant a part of kind of farm level economics, what you spend on inputs can be, I think maybe the best case scenario is that farmers and growers are kind of immediately behind the 8 ball on having a profitable year if they are, procuring inputs, crop protection, fertilizer, seed that is not what they are expecting or not to the quality that they think they are purchasing. Really at worst, you can have more significant crop loss, harvest loss, affecting the ability to export products due to restrictions in importers on things like counterfeits and banned products, and overall kind of depressed rural economies. So I think you can have a range of impacts, some of them being quite significant, and that's at the farm level. If you even look at the effects on suppliers themselves, many cases, kind of small agro dealers or shops. I mean the impacts. I've seen some studies on individual countries. Impacts can be up to tens of millions of dollars for those supplying both seed and herbicides and crop protection products.
Here, John, you talked about many of those impacts, and one of them being the loss in farming productivity. And I want to come back to that and ask you to quantify how much does or do the farmers lose by using low quality or counterfeit seeds, for example?
So there's not a super clear number to put out there as far as what that loss looks like across the continent. But let's take maybe, for example, one kind of product quality issue or counterfeit issue of selling hybrid or selling OPV, open pollinated variety seed labeled as hybrid. So farmers have saved and they've made that expenditure to purchase hybrid seed, expecting to get that kind of value when the productivity maybe at best of that seed they are getting is maybe 20 to 30% less than they were expecting from that hybrid. And that's even, that's the impact on the productivity. That's even before that, that farmer has also purchased fertilizers that particular open pollinated variety may not be responding to as well. And that's even before you get into one of the other situations where it's not even OPV seed being sold as hybrid, it's just harvested grain, which would depress that yield probably beyond that 20 to 30% loss. So that's just kind of one example. I think when you look into the situation of inauthentic or counterfeit crop protection products, I think the impact can be even more dramatic. You buy a product, spray it, expecting it to protect your harvest against pests and diseases, and it doesn't. And then it's really a sad situation for that farmer that's been taken advantage of.
So farmers may be losing 20 to 30 and even more to low quality inputs, mainly the seeds and then the other inputs. Tell me, do we inform them? Do they know what they lose?
I think we have a gap in terms of creating enough awareness. There's, of course, a significant number of farmers who are aware, but we have a major gap to make sure that farmers are aware. There is a danger, of course, when some of that poor quality inputs come with additional problems, like poor quality seed coming with a disease. You see, that compounds the whole problem. In potato, if you have poor quality seed which comes with a bacterial wilt or other diseases, you can lose your crop entirely. So there is some gap in terms of creating awareness. Maybe Jacob can allude to that. I know we have done in the past some kind of awareness, and you can see there is a gap in terms of creating more awareness with farmers.
And also there was a question on data. Do we have clear data, or is it just those estimations? Or do we have strategies to have reliable data that we can use to convince not only the farmers, but also the policymakers who would facilitate the importation of all those inputs, or the availability and accessibility of those to the farmers?
We have currently there are efforts to, of course, address the issue of counterfeits, issues of low quality farm inputs. It's a multi-institutional approach. Of course, we are aware, and of course even the Minister of Agriculture is aware of the impact of low quality or counterfeit farm inputs. And awareness have been done in the counties, in the farming levels, farming communities. And of course, even demonstrations of what impact can fake seed and also low quality farm input can cause to the production and the overall agriculture within this country or even within the farming community. So the way my panelists have said is that there's if it's not checked, food security will be affected, livelihoods will be affected, income to the farming communities will be affected. Those who are breeding for new technologies, of course, will be also affected in terms of there will be no consumption for the new technologies by the farming community. So yes, there are systems currently because of that multi-institutional approach, which is coordinated by the Anti-Counterfeit Authority, which we are a member. We are a member in that multi-institutional approach because of our mandates on quality assurance of the farm inputs, especially seed. Of course, we also test fertilizer. So we are currently collecting data.
So there is an effort to collect.
There is an effort. And of course on seed, we've put a lot of effort to ensure that we lower. I will be sharing the mechanisms
we will come back to that.
Are in place to ensure that we address and let the farmer benefit as much as possible, from the inputs that have been put in the pipeline to ensure that productivity continues to rise, and of course food security is addressed, and of course also nutrition security is addressed.
Thank you very much for that. It is clear from your submissions that the low quality and counterfeit in farming input is a real issue, and it has impact on productivity and in the overall production of food for our population, and also on the income that the farmer could get from his or her effort. I think that is very key. We still have paucity of data to help in advocacy at the level of the farmers to create more understanding of what they need, that they need to go for the best quality input, but also to have advocacy at the policy and decision makers level so that they ease the process of getting high quality inputs in the countries, in the continent, so that we can unlock the potential that we have in the agricultural system. Let's take a break, and when we come, we'll look at different measures that we need to take so that this key problem can be addressed. Welcome back to our Kikao session.
Thank you.
We are talking of low quality inputs, and I want to bring you an anecdote, which seemingly is a real a situation which happened really. Somebody crushing stones and packaging them and selling them as a fertilizer to farmers. So counterfeits in farm inputs is there, and low quality farming input is also there. So tell me, do we have some measures in place to make sure that the farmer gets the high quality material that he pays for when it comes to the seeds, when it comes to fertilizers or pesticide?
I can start
Yes,
with some observations there. I think the thinking about the anecdote that was just shared there. Sort of thinking about what are some of the ways that that farmers can be taken advantage of with inputs, and I think some of the common ones are sort of either kind of mislabeling products, be they kind of crop protection products or seed, kind of diluting products, be they again seed or crop protection, diluting high quality seed with grain, for example, or watering down crop protection products, or reusing containers in bags. So I think if we start with that kind of observation to say, what are some of the pathways that counterfeit or illegal products get out there, it gives us some opportunities to think how we can try and limit some of those channels. So some of the work that is done now by my organization, Crop Life International, and others, is specifically around kind of removing some of those containers through container recycling programs, around education to really understand and know your suppliers, to try and eliminate some of the bad actors who are engaging in some of the points I raised earlier. And also looking for those kinds of technologies that exist that can be used to authenticate inputs, be they things like barcodes or the sort of coin scratch technology, mobile testing kits, things like that can give farmers a little more confidence through some sort of technology that they're getting what they paid for.
Yeah, that's very good. So there are numbers of technologies which can be used to at least help the farmer to identify and distinguish the good from the bad. And that is one of the measures. Do we have some other measures which are applied here in different organizations?
Yep. In the seed industry, we have mechanisms. Of course, we have the administrative controls. These are the registrations where the players, the actors in the seed industry are supposed to be registered, given licenses. And then we have also the technical aspects where you do inspections, you do verifications, you do testings. And finally, when those requirements have been met, you, as you said, you label, and of course ensure that they are visible quality marks, which the farmer will be looking at when they are looking for the product that is certified, and it is also good for them. And of course, we also do labeling. Once a product has been deemed to have met all the requirements, we label it. And there is also a mechanism of confirming whether the label that has been put onto that packet is also genuine.
So tell me, are the farmers equipped to identify those certified seeds, for example, for the seeds, to understand that label which is there? Are they given the information on where they have the right, the proper agro dealers who can sell the right seeds, for example? I'm focusing on the seeds because I think it is the most important input when it comes to ensuring that the farmer get the right productivity. So are they equipped to identify the good seeds? Are they equipped with the knowledge of where to purchase the good seeds?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because many farmers have some idea what they want. So they will go to the stockist and say, I want this kind of seed. So that control point of the stockist has to be strong, that they can actually give them what they are looking for, because they will rely on those stockists to give them quality. Even when they know that certified seed will look like this, that chain has to work through the stockist, through the supply chain. We will also need to sort, the regulatory. Jacob has mentioned very well. Kenya has a very strong regulator, but the law, for a long time, the fine for selling fake seed was Kenya shilling 2,000 for a long time. I think it's been changed now, but it's still not deterrent enough. There are fellows who will break the law anyway because they know the fine is not too big. They will go and pay and repeat the action. And what KFS will do is to deregister them. But that side of the law has also to make sure it is strong to deter people from providing counterfeits.
I think that is quite very important, that we have the farmers equipped and the system put in place in a correct way. John, at a certain time, talked about the seed issue, saying, oh, we need to have the farmers understanding that using proper seed and sometimes hybrids instead of using OPV seeds can ensure that they have good yields. Let me ask you a question about the quality of seeds, and here it will be mainly the farmers using the grain they produce vis-a-vis the use of hybrid seeds, for example. Do we have that kind of openness of the farmers, understanding that they can have better yield by using hybrids instead of recycling their grains and using them as seeds, or going to the market and taking anything and falling sometime in the hands of those using counterfeit?
I can go first on that one too. I think there's a lot of issues rolled in there. I know there are historically, including groups like AATF, there's outreach programs trying to showcase to farmers the value of hybrid seed or frankly even high quality processed seed versus planting their own grain. So I think that is that's something that's happening and needs to continue happening. But I think the point that was made before is still valid. That no matter how much we are educating farmers on the value of hybrid seed, if they are making those purchases and not really getting what's expected, it really can have an impact for seasons to come, because there's that sort of lack of trust, and maybe it sort of kind of negates all of that outreach and education that had been done earlier. A farmer buys hybrid seed, he plants it, he gets nothing better than planting grain because he didn't actually buy hybrid seed. He got something that was mislabeled and frankly not hybrid seed.
There is a lot to be done.
That question is directly related to two things. One, which is the cost of the input. So there has to be some equilibrium so that farmers are able to afford good quality. If they are not able to afford, naturally they go to either recycle or they will be pray for low quality supply. Then the other question is about also demand meeting the supply. If there's a good product and is not available in the market, farmers will try to be clever and say, well, I can get a slightly lower yield, but I can recycle a good product if it's not available. So the demand has to, have the data which makes that supply and demand be able to move the change
in the right direction.
And I think that's one of the things. Obviously, you look at what drives suppliers to engage in sort of counterfeiting or diluting seed. It's frankly many times a mismatch of supply and demand. If I know I can earn a certain number of additional shillings from this seed and I don't have enough, well, the temptation is there to just water it down a little bit. So what drives that behavior to begin with? And it is that mismatch of supply and demand often.
Yeah. There are many different issues that need to be looked into and addressed so that the farmers can get the high quality input that they need, and also be shielded from falling in the trap of those using counterfeits or low quality material. I would suggest we take a break, and when we come, we look at the policy and enabling environment for those very important inputs to reach the farmers on the right time and in the right quantities. Welcome back to the Kikao session.
Thank you.
There is one thing we talked about, and about the counterfeit and the low quality. And I'm curious to say, have we identified who or which kind of stakeholders are most responsible for that kind of things? Is it at the level of seed producers, for example? Is it at the level of agro dealers? Is it at any other level that counterfeiting is happening?
There is a lot of intensive awareness that is being done by Ministry of Agriculture, agriculture-related agencies, counties, seed companies, and also the agro dealers. There is a lot, and even KEFIS will do it before the season starts, so that farmers are equipped on what to look for and how to report on issues of fake seed. But on the issue of at what point is the weakest link, it's difficult to identify which point is the weakest link, but the appropriate one, the most likelihood could be the at agro dealer level. Yeah. But of course we have situations where it cannot be the agro dealer or the seed producer, the seed company. These could be the individuals who could who want to benefit from a gap somewhere in terms of the supply. So if the supply is not adequate to meet the requirements of the farming community when it is readily needed, any other person who has the means can come on board using his own vehicle, who does not even have a premise, use his own vehicle and try to supply what is not genuine to the farming community. So it might not be the agro dealer or the seed company. It could be these other people who want to benefit from an opportunity there, a gap on the supply of seed. But of course, we have, as an institution also, we have an exercise called post-certification survey, where we move around as the season approaches to check on the supply of seed. Of course, the best, the popular varieties to the farming community. We look for those because those are the ones which are being faked every now and then. Yeah. So we move around, check on the supply, the delivery of varieties. When there is a gap, we report to the relevant seed companies to ensure that they supply that particular variety so that they fill that gap.
Exactly. I think here that, where it's coming from is, obviously depends on the particular country and basically how narrow versus wide the supply chain looks like. As was just mentioned, in the seed sector, we have, basically the offenders, for lack of a better word, as was just said, coming from, dealers further up the chain to seed companies, but also from those kinds of contract growers and outgrowers who, the seed companies may not really be getting what they are expecting even from their contract growers. So they are kind of unknowingly putting forward lower quality products than they would expect. There's one of the most detailed pieces of work I've seen on this product was done by the Gates Foundation and a company called Deloitte, looking specifically at where this kind of counterfeiting occurs in both maize seed and crop protection in two representative countries of Ghana and Uganda. So, for example, in Ghana, they point out, that of the counterfeits, 80% comes from, the reuse of seed packages for varieties which are not what's in the bag. And it is really coming from a mix of seed companies and dealers. if you look at the crop protection side, oftentimes that's not quite as diverse of a supply chain, and you often can have even those kinds of counterfeit crop protection products even coming in through importation in places where these are manufactured outside of the continent. So in places like this, really valuable for, as Jacob mentioned, groups like CAFIS to be kind of aware of what's coming in and making sure that, you sort of know your supplier is to be reputable in delivering authentic products.
So it is very important that we have systems in place to really check what we have on the market and have also policies and measures to stop that kind of spread of counterfeit. And this brings us to the issue of policies. Do we have policies at country level or at regional level that could safeguard the farmers against these counterfeit agricultural input?
Yeah. I think that varies from country to country. I am aware that Kenya has very strong, pesticide regulator, seed regulator. They are not very strong on fertilizer regulation, unfortunately. So it could be a weak point. But one thing is to have the policy, and another to make sure that that policy addresses the whole spectrum of what farmers need. There are areas where, for example, OPVs can be very useful, but you need them to be regulated as well. So regulated hybrids, regulate satisfied seed across the whole spectrum, so that if there is a place where it is useful for farmers to use certain quality, then it is regulated as such, so that farmers don't get a raw deal. I think it's a whole range of capacity, and also making sure that the regulator has all the tools they need to be able to do their work. So I'm saying the Kenyan team is very strong. Clearly, they cannot be in every corner of the country.
No, it is.
They have to rely on other agencies, police, a county, as Jacob mentioned. So that synergy has to be there in terms of implementation of the policies.
Yeah, that is very good. At least we have very strong policies here in Kenya and in other countries. But the implementation, as you say, Abed, is one other thing, and then considering the whole spectrum. Do we have some countries or some regions that made it possible to have all these policies and control mechanisms in place? And if there are those countries or regions, what did they do to get there? What can we learn from them? Which kind of leaf can we borrow from them?
As I started with, I gave the example of Europe, obviously a very highly regulated and developed market, and even somewhere like that, they haven't solved this problem. 10 to 15% of kind of, in this case, illegal crop protection products. That's still quite large.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't think there's maybe examples that are perfect, but I would say some places that have been maybe more effective have really focused on, one, not just policies but in enforcement and deterrence. We heard the example before. If the fine isn't enough, why bother changing your behavior, for example? And also in addition to the sort of enforcement and deterrence, also really focusing on education and knowing your suppliers, knowing where your products are coming from, looking for ways to sort of basically identify and weed out those sort of less reputable suppliers to try and have more impact earlier on the value chain, earlier in the supply chain if you can.
What are we doing to borrow from those good cases where they have some counterfeit, but not as much, and they have systems to address those who are culprits in counterfeit by having a strong enforcement mechanism? What do we do, for example, at country level or at African sub-regional level like EAC, COMESA and others?
Yeah, it is true. We have policies, like for us in Kenya, we have a seed policy 2010, which is actually to ensure that we have affordable, accessible, and available seed for the farming community. We have also a seed law, CAP 326, which is helping to regulate the whole seed industry to achieve the objectives that I've mentioned that are required by the Kenyan seed policy. Of course, there is also the issue of harmonization, which is currently happening within the region. And that is also another objective of the seed policy, and also integrating the industry to the changes that are happening. For our case, previously we used to rely on the seed label, the paper, but currently we have an online electronic kind of seed label where if you scratch and send a code, that code will be giving the farmer the status of the seed they are accessing. So yeah, we have regulations from the COMESA region. We have also an ongoing exercise within the EAC to come up with the EAC bill to address the seed industry. And as Abed mentioned, the enforcement bit is also very important. And I know for our case, when KEFI started, our major thing that we enforced fully was the issue of enforcement of all the applicable laws that we were applying and still applying now. So we've been fully enforcing what the law says. And if there is any area that needs amendment, of course, we've been
the amendment can still
working with the seed industry and also the region to ensure that we facilitate as fast as it is possible the seed industry to enable them meet their requirements so that the farming community can get the best available seed and farm inputs.
I'm glad that there are policies which are domesticated at country level to ensure that the farmers get the right farm input. I'm also very glad that there are mechanisms to enforce that those policies are followed by. And also something I'm very glad of is that there is an effort to have those policies harmonized at the regional level, like EAC, like COMESA and other regions. And hopefully one day, policies will be harmonized at the continent level and link with the open market, the AFTA, which is now open. My dream is to see that all these inputs, including seeds, of produced on different ways, different technologies, but certified seeds being traded throughout the continent without taking into account the borders. Because here you can have produce hybrid seed of maize, for example, and you want to bring it to Rwanda, to Mozambique, to Malawi, and you have a serious problem. And I hope that with this open market at the continental level, then it will be possible, and I think it will be something very profitable for most of our farmers across the continent. We talked about the issue of low quality farm input. We talked about counterfeit, which is there. And we even localize the level in the supply chain where the counterfeiting is most happening. And we need policies, we need enforcement mechanism to deter those and protect the farmers. against those, to equip them through awareness creation so that they know what is counterfeit, what is low quality, and distinguish it from the high quality that they need to use to unlock the potential of the seed and have high productivity. I think there is a lot to do at national level, at regional level, at the continental level, to have those policies and mechanisms put in place so that the farmers can benefit fully. I want to thank you for your contribution to this question. It is a great question because we need to ensure that the farmers get the right product for their money. But also, I want to thank our viewers for their attention and for listening to us. I think we need to spread all this good information brought in by the experts from different areas at global level, but also at continental and national level, so that the farmer can really benefit, because the benefits that the farmer will get will certainly cascade to every one of us, because we are all consumers and we depend on the production of food at the level of the farmer. Thank you very much. I invite you to the next Kikao session, and for now, goodbye.
That's the picture. Agriculture indeed has a place in transforming Africa's agriculture, and there is still more room to cover. This has been Kikao, your weekly focus on agriculture. Until next week, my name is Joe Agayo.